Your jaw is stronger than you think. Right now, without moving anything, notice where your back teeth are sitting, touching, or apart. That single detail predicts more about your face than any cream on your bathroom shelf. Somewhere between your ear and your cheekbone sits a hinge, and that hinge has been quietly deciding for years whether your face gets to rest or has to work. The masseter is that hinge's engine. It's the thick muscle you can feel if you clench your back teeth together right now and press 2 fingers just in front of your ear. Go ahead, do it once. Feel that bulge rise under your fingers? That's the muscle a lot of people are currently paying to have partially paralyzed with injections 3 or 4 times a year because it's grown too strong, too tight, too permanently switched on. What almost nobody explains is what switched it on in the first place, or why a 2-minute release, done correctly, can do something an injection can't. Teach the hinge to choose rest again instead of forcing it into temporary silence. I spent about 5 months testing this on myself before I trusted it enough to bring it here. Not because I doubted the anatomy isn't really in question, but because I wanted to know whether 2 minutes was a marketing number or an honest one. It turned out to be, if anything, a slight underestimate for people whose clench pattern runs deep. I'll give you the exact version, the timing, and the 3 variations depending on where your particular pattern lives. First though, you need to see the pattern in yourself, because until you do, the release is just a stretch with no target. Picture the drive home. Traffic slows, someone cuts across 2 lanes without signaling, and your hands tighten slightly on the wheel. What most people never notice is that their jaw tightens at the exact same moment. Not because the jaw is involved in driving, but because the jaw is one of the body's oldest alarm switches. And alarm switches don't wait for permission to fire. By the time you park, your masseter has clenched and released dozens of times without a single conscious command from you. Multiply that by every commute this month. Now picture 3 in the morning. Nobody chooses to clench in their sleep. The body does it on its own, usually as a pressure valve for stress that never got processed during waking hours. Dentists have a name for the damage this leaves behind. Worn enamel, flattened cusps, a masseter that's visibly larger on one side than the other by the time someone reaches their 40s or 50s. The muscle doesn't know it's asleep. It only knows it's been assigned a job, and it does that job at 2 a.m. with the same intensity it would use during an actual argument. And then there's the version most of us are doing as we read anything, including this. Screen time pulls the head forward, the forward head pulls the jaw back and up to compensate, and that compensation is a low, constant hum of tension that never fully resolves. Not while you're answering messages, not while you're scrolling, not even while you're half listening to something in the background. It's the quietest of the 3 patterns, and because of that, often the hardest to catch. Here's what connects all 3. None of them are really about the jaw. The jaw is the messenger. The message is coming from somewhere structural. The same reason a fortress reinforces its outer wall after every skirmish. Not because that particular wall was under direct attack, but because the whole structure has learned that threats arrive suddenly and the perimeter had better be ready. Your masseter behaves the same way. It isn't reacting to whatever's actually in front of you. It's maintaining a permanent state of readiness because your nervous system decided at some point that readiness was cheaper than being caught off guard. And the trouble with a permanently reinforced wall is that reinforcement itself becomes the new normal. The fortress doesn't relax once the threat passes. It just treats reinforced as the resting state going forward. And each new alert makes the next reinforcement feel more necessary, not less. That's the loop. The masseter doesn't get less clenched because the stressor ends. It gets recruited into a standing defense posture. And standing defense postures, by design, don't stand down easily. This is where the load-bearing piece matters, because a muscle that's constantly braced doesn't just sit there quietly getting stronger. It starts pulling on everything attached to it. The masseter anchors along the jawbone and up into the cheekbone area, and a muscle under chronic tension behaves exactly like a support beam under chronic load. It shortens, it thickens, and it drags whatever's attached to it slightly out of its original position. Over years, that drag shows up as a square jawline that wasn't always square, as cheeks that seem to sit lower than they used to, as a jaw that looks wider from the front than it does in old photographs. Injectable treatments address the size of the muscle. They do nothing about the drag, because the drag comes from tension patterns in the surrounding connective tissue. And tension patterns don't respond to a needle, they respond to release. Everything I've just walked through, the driving clench, the sleep clench, the screen time hum, the fortress logic behind all three, connects through one continuous system of tissue running from your jaw down through your neck and shoulders. That's exactly the terrain covered in the connected face protocol. 12 fascial releases, sequenced over 30 days, each one paired with a labeled diagram showing precisely where to place your hands and a daily tracking sheet so you can watch the pattern loosen instead of guessing. You'll find it linked in the description and the pinned comment. What we know about muscles that stay chronically braced is fairly consistent across the tissue research. Sustained low-grade contraction reduces local blood flow. Blood flow reduction limits the tissue's ability to clear metabolic waste, and that waste buildup is a large part of what people describe as a jaw that feels tired or achy even without pain. Separately, the connective tissue surrounding a chronically tight muscle tends to thicken and lose some of its natural glide over time. Think of a rope that's been kept taut for years versus one that's been allowed to hang loose. The taut one develops a memory for that shape. Put those two findings together and you get a fairly complete picture of why the masseter, once it learns tension, doesn't easily unlearn it on its own. It needs an outside signal telling it the alarm has passed. That signal is mechanical, not chemical, and it's exactly what a release provides that an injection doesn't. There's a version of this pattern that shows up specifically around gum. People chew gum thinking they're doing something neutral, sometimes even something healthy, and the masseter treats every hour of chewing as an hour of strength training, because that's literally what repetitive resistance does to any muscle. A masseter that gets an extra 60 minutes of daily reps from gum, on top of the driving clench and the sleep clench and the screen time hum, is a masseter that's being trained toward exactly the bulk that eventually gets treated with an injection to reduce. There's another version that shows up in meetings, specifically the kind where you're holding back a reaction, biting down on a comment you've decided not to make out loud. That's not a figure of speech, it's a literal physical bite down, and it happens in boardrooms and kitchen tables with roughly equal frequency. The jaw absorbs restraint the same way it absorbs threat. It doesn't distinguish between the two. Botox works on the masseter by partially blocking the nerve signal that tells the muscle to contract, which does shrink the muscle over a few months, because a muscle that can't fully fire also can't maintain its bulk. That's a real mechanism, and it does produce a real result for a lot of people. What it doesn't do is address why the signal was firing constantly in the first place, which is why the treatment has to be repeated. The fortress rebuilds its wall the moment the block wears off, because nothing about the underlying readiness state was ever changed. A release works on the opposite end of the same system. Instead of blocking the signal, it manually convinces the tissue that the threat is passed, using direct pressure and movement the muscle can't argue with. Done consistently, that manual conversation retrains the resting state itself, which is a different kind of result than a temporary block, and a more durable one. Let's get into the actual release, because understanding the mechanism without the technique leaves you exactly where you started. This takes 2 minutes, and it works differently depending on which of the 3 patterns is dominant for you. So pay attention to which one sounded most familiar a moment ago. Start seated, spine tall, shoulders down and away from your ears. Place the pads of your first 2 fingers on the muscle you found earlier, the bulge just in front of your ear when you clench. Let your jaw hang slightly open, teeth not touching, and apply firm, steady pressure into that muscle. Not a poke, a sustained press. Roughly the pressure you'd use to test if bread dough is finished rising. Hold that pressure for 10 slow seconds while breathing normally through your nose. Then, keeping the pressure in place, very slowly open and close your mouth 5 times. Small movements, maybe an inch of motion, feeling the muscle shift and release slightly under your fingers with each repetition. Move your fingers about half an inch back toward the hinge point, right where the jawbone meets the skull, and repeat the same sequence. 10 seconds of pressure, 5 slow, small openings. That's 1 full cycle, roughly 45 seconds, and you'll do 2 full cycles to fill the 2 minutes. If your dominant pattern is the driving clench, the daytime stress-triggered version, do this release at the end of your workday, ideally still in the car or right after you walk in the door, before the tension has a chance to settle into the evening. Your masseter is warm and active at that point, which actually makes the release faster and more noticeable. If your dominant pattern is the sleep clench, the timing that matters most is right before bed, not in the morning. You're not trying to undo the damage from the previous night. You're trying to lower the muscle's baseline tension before it heads into 8 hours of unsupervised activity. People with this pattern often need a 3rd cycle, closer to 3 minutes total, because the muscle has years of nighttime reinforcement to work through. And that's fine. Extend the same 2 steps for 1 more round rather than pressing harder. If your dominant pattern is the screen time hum, the release matters less than the trigger does. Pair it with something you already do at your desk every single day, right after your first coffee, right before you close your laptop. Because this pattern is about frequency of small resets, not intensity of a single session. 2 shorter sessions, morning and late afternoon, at 1 cycle each, will outperform a single long session for this specific pattern. One caution across all 3 versions. If you feel any sharp clicking, locking, or genuine pain, rather than a dull, releasing ache, ease off the pressure by about half and stop the repetitions if it continues. That's not the muscle releasing. That's the joint itself asking for a different kind of attention than a self-release can provide. And pushing through it isn't discipline. It's ignoring information your body is giving you for a reason. Across the 5 months I tracked this on myself, the pattern that showed up consistently was not a dramatic overnight change. Anyone promising that with a stretch is selling something. What showed up instead, somewhere between week 2 and week 3, was a masseter that felt noticeably softer to the touch by late afternoon, the time of day it used to feel most fatigued. By week 6, a colleague who hadn't been told anything about the experiment asked unprompted if I'd changed something about my jawline. Not lost weight, not done anything cosmetic, just change something. That's roughly the honest timeline. Not 2 days, not 2 minutes and done forever. 2 minutes, most days, for about 6 weeks before the shift becomes visible to someone who isn't looking for it. There's a smaller thing worth mentioning, something I didn't expect going in. On the days I skipped the release entirely, I could feel the difference by evening far more than I expected to. A kind of low-grade tightness returning, almost like the muscle remembered its old job the moment nobody reminded it otherwise. That's not a flaw in the method. If anything, it's proof the method is targeting something real, because a placebo effect wouldn't fade that predictably on the days you stop doing it. Go back to that hinge you noticed at the very start, the one just in front of your ear, quietly deciding whether your face gets to rest or has to work. That decision has been running on autopilot for years. Driving, sleeping, staring at screens, biting back things you didn't say, and none of it needed your permission to happen. The 2 minutes you just learned is permission running the other direction. It's you walking up to that hinge and telling it, directly, with pressure it can feel, that the alarm has passed and it's allowed to stand down. Notice your jaw again, right now, teeth apart, muscle at rest. That small, unremarkable moment of nothing happening in your face is the entire point. Not a transformation, not a before and after, just a hinge that finally believes it's safe enough to let go, which, it turns out, is the quietest and most reliable thing a face can do. Here's the ritual, stripped down to its simplest form. Toothbrush down, 2 fingers to the hinge point, 2 full pressure and open cycles, every single night before bed for the next 14 days. The toothbrush is your trigger. You already do that every night without thinking about it, so let it double as the cue that starts the release. Track it on paper if that helps you stay honest with yourself. A check mark for 14 nights is a small commitment and an easy one to keep. If this changed how your own jaw feels by the time you finish 2 weeks, that's worth telling someone whose jaw sounds exactly like the ones described here. The driver, the clencher, the screen scroller holding tension nobody told them to hold. And if you want the fuller sequence that carries this work down through the neck and shoulders, that's what's waiting in the description and the pinned comment whenever you're ready for it. Subscribe if any part of this made your own jaw unclench even slightly while you were listening. That reaction is exactly the kind of thing worth following further. Let me walk through what usually goes wrong in the first few nights, because almost everyone hits the same 2 snags, and neither one means the technique isn't working for you. The first snag is pressure. People either press so lightly that nothing happens, or they press so hard they end up bracing against the exact tension they're trying to release, which defeats the whole purpose. You're not trying to dig into the muscle like it owes you something. Think of it more like holding a door open just enough that it can't slam shut. Firm, steady, sustained, but never a fight. If your jaw is clenching back against your own fingers, that's your body treating the touch itself as a threat, which tells you the muscle has been on guard duty so long, it doesn't know the difference anymore between a hand and a hazard. Back off 10%. Hold longer instead of pressing harder. The release comes from time under gentle pressure, not from force. The second snag is timing the open part. People rush it, treating the drop the jaw motion like a rep to get through instead of the actual point of the exercise. Slow it down. When you let the jaw fall open, give it a full 3 or 4 seconds to actually arrive at rest, not just pass through on its way to closing again. That's the moment the hinge gets the message. Everything before it, the 2 fingers, the pressure, the 14 seconds of holding, is just clearing the static so that message can land. If you skip through the open phase, you've done the setup and skipped the payoff. Some of you are going to notice something else around night 4 or 5. A faint ache, almost like the soreness you get from a workout, sitting right at that hinge point the next morning. That's normal, and it's actually a decent sign, not a warning one. A muscle that's been locked in low-grade contraction for years doesn't just relax the first time someone asks nicely. It has to remember how to move through its full range again, and that remembering has a cost. The same way your legs ache after the first walk in months, even though walking is the most natural thing in the world. If the soreness is sharp, or it radiates up toward your ear or down your neck in a way that worries you, that's different. Stop. And mention it to a dentist or a physical therapist who works with jaw tension. Because at that point, you might be dealing with something structural, like a joint issue, that pressure alone shouldn't be pushing on without a professional watching. For the vast majority of people though, what you'll feel is dull, local, and gone by the second night. That's just tissue waking back up. By day 7, most people report the same specific thing, almost word for word, which is why I trust it more than I trust a single glowing testimonial. They stop noticing their jaw during the day. Not that it feels amazing, not some dramatic before and after, just an absence. The low hum of clenching that used to sit under everything. The thing you only notice once it's gone because you never quite noticed it while it was there, goes quiet. You catch yourself at a red light, or in a meeting, or scrolling right before bed, and your jaw is just hanging there, doing nothing, the way it's supposed to when nothing is actually wrong. That absence is the entire result. It doesn't photograph well. It won't get you a viral transformation clip, but it's the thing that over months is doing the quiet work of not carving new lines into your face every single day, which is worth more than almost anything a serum promises to do after the fact. If you've got a stronger jaw, or you clench hard enough in your sleep that you've cracked a tooth or worn down a night guard, 2 cycles a night might not be enough, and that's fine. There's no rule against a 3rd cycle, or a short 30-second version at some point midday if you catch yourself locked up at your desk. The floor is 14 nights, 2 cycles before bed. The ceiling is whatever your particular jaw actually needs, and you'll know because you'll feel the difference between that helped and that barely touched it. Trust that feedback over any fixed number I could give you. One more thing worth saying honestly, this isn't going to undo years of tension in 2 weeks, And anyone telling you it will is selling you something. What 2 weeks does is prove the mechanism to yourself. Prove that the muscle responds, that the tightness isn't fixed, that there's a lever here you can actually pull. Once you've proven that, the real work is just consistency. The same unglamorous consistency that anything durable is built from. 2 minutes a night is cheap enough that there's no good reason not to keep paying it, especially once you've felt what the alternative costs by evening on the days you skip it. So find that hinge again, right now, one more time, just in front of your ear. Feel whether it's doing its job or still running the old program. However it answers tonight, it won't answer the same way in 2 weeks. Not because anything transformed, but because you finally showed up and told it, night after night, that it's allowed to rest. That's the whole method. That's the whole video. Toothbrush down, 2 fingers to the hinge, and permission running the other direction, starting tonight.